Hello everyone, I am T. Rose Naveja, here today to deliver a presentation to you for your edification on a very specific microbial disease, namely Hansen's disease. Has anyone ever heard of Hansen's disease? And if you have, what is the other name for this ancient disease? If you guess it is leprosy, then you would be correct. The man responsible for discovering the cause of this disease and making the connection to leprosy is Gerhard A. Hansen, who originated from Norway. He made this startling discovery in 1873 when he was 32 years old. The disease was named after him to quash the stigma associated with the disease. It was once believed that leprosy was a heritable disease, but with his research, he was able to dispel that belief. The history of this disease is most humiliating for another reason, because of the association with sin and leprosy being a punishment from God. The scientific name of this organism on the right is Mycobacterium leprae. All these names on the left over here in the taxonomy describe their function and structure. Let us look at them separately. M. leprae is a gram-positive acid-fast bacteria with hydrophobic walls, abundant in lipids, which is characteristic of their phylum, Actinobacteria, and has a high count of C and G nucleotides. C and G is cytosine and guanine nucleotides in their DNA that help them to grow and function. Actinomycelates means they are rod-shaped bacteria. Corynebacteriae means the bacteria is non-motile. Mycobacteriaceae, the end in ACES is Latin denoting the nature of or made of to resemble something. In this case, it is made up of bacteria all put together. Mycobacterium is the name of the bacteria, and the species is leprae, meaning leprosy. Leprosy bacterium. I would like to acquaint you all with a little history of leprosy. The earliest known record was recorded in India, China, and Egypt in the year 600 BC. Christians know that BC stands for before Christ, and non-Christians know that BC means before the current time, or before the current era, BCE. The name leprosy carries a rude and humiliating stigma of immorality, provoking the scourge of God to identify and punish sinners, as he wants to put them on display. This changed when the bacteria associated with this disease was identified by Gerhard A. Hansen. Still, the misfortune and misinformation followed the victims, and so the name was changed to reflect the name of the scientist who made the connection between the bacteria and the malady. The origin of its pathogenesis is speculative. It is suspected that the bacteria enter the airways, such as breathing the same air as the victim in close quarters, nasal mucus, overcrowding living conditions, tattoo needles, eating armadillos, and or being in the same area as the animal. The main route of destruction is hypothesized to be the nasal passage, as can be seen in the right in the 4,000-year-old leper skull unearthed in India. Leprosy degrades the bony structure of the facial bones and spreads throughout the peripheral areas of the body, such as the eyes, ears, skin, fingers, and toes. Notice the misshapen skull, face, and jaw, and especially the nose socket. It invades the skin peripheral limbs, nerves, and testicles in men, rendering them infertile. The macrophage immune system consumes the bacteria, but instead of lysing it, the macrophage becomes infected instead, causing the macrophages to cling to the myelin sheath of the Schwann cells that are located within the peripheral nervous system. This creates a buildup of useless infected macrophages. Nitric oxide builds up from the macrophage overload, and the nitric oxide enters the nerves in the neighboring areas, causing damage to the mitochondria in that area and the destruction of the myelin sheath, causing the myelin to protrude as seen by the porcibacillary features on the patient's eyebrows. And there to that picture there on the left there. Minus the eyebrows, the person loses their eyebrows when they become infected with it. They get nodules in their earlobes and other distorted facial features, especially cataracts in the eyes in the middle picture there. Other areas of the body are affected as well, causing clawed hands and feet. There are different degrees and types of Hansen's disease. The two dominant characteristics are the tuberculoid, dealing with desensitized nerves with borders of nodules, also known as porcibacillary, and ashy skin. Recovering from this type is good if the person has a high humidity. If not, it graduates into the progressive type known as lepromatose stage, known as multibacillary, that form nodules all over the body. There are also borderline stages between the tuberculoid and the lepromatose stage. Sulfide drugs are bacteriostatic. It stops the bacteria from reproducing. Now remember in the previous slide, the phylum Actinobacteria, well, it has a large amount of cytosine and guanine nucleotides. Sulfides interfere with the synthesis of folic acid needed for nucleic acid formation. The drugs used to count M. leprae are dapsone, which is a sulfur, rifampicin, which is an antibiotic, and clofazimine, which is a dye with leprostatic and inflammatory effects. These drugs are taken in combination for over a year, 1 to 2 years, depending on the severity of the illness, until the patient is cured. Once cured, their immune system adapts to further protect the patient from additional infection. There is a vaccine presently for Hansen's disease known as Bacillus calmette-guerin, BCG for short, which is judged to be an applicable protective measure in the management of the disease to its capacity to stimulate the promotion of cellular immunity. This vaccine can be administered in areas that are considered in need, but if the country's infrastructure in these poor areas, such as in Brazil and other heavily diseased areas of the world, China, India, Madagascar, the vaccine will not be able to reach the ones most in need. When one lives in destitute areas of the world, the disease will continue as it has been until some organization, such as a Christian organization or a charitable organization, comes in to stem the problem. Leprosy can be prevented by avoiding areas of contamination. If that is not possible, it is better to maintain a distance from untreated and infected people. If someone is infected, they should be advised to cover their mouth and nose while coughing and sneezing, and avoid spitting on the ground, and wash their hands diligently and back it up with some type of alcohol. They should be instructed to take medication so that they can be cured. Separate utensils should be used along with washcloth and towels. Clothing should be washed separately from uninfected people, as M. Leprosy clings to fabrics and leathers and even walls. The picture of the animal right there is an armadillo. Very strange looking creature. And yes, and that is roasted armadillo wrapped in bacon. And one of the features that armadillo have is that they can roll themselves up into a ball, like a football, over there in the upper right hand. I wonder what it tastes like, the bacon. Okay, behave. Okay, armadillo. All right, get it together. Armadillo is a Spanish word that means little armored one. The animal is a carrier of M. leprae, and when it is consumed by people who are immune to the bacteria, nothing happens to them. They do not exhibit the disease, but they may be carriers. And that would be 95% of the people in those particular areas. The other 5% succumb to the disease. Mycobacterium leprae is a zoonotic disease in that bacteria are transferred from animal to human. Zoonotic, like in zoo, from animal to people. People who are not immune to this disease develop leprosy. In states where winters are mild, in North America, the armadillo is suspected to be a major factor in approximately 30 cases. You know, each year like Florida. Florida has a lot of armadillos running all over the place. I lived in Florida, so I can attest to that. Texas and Louisiana. In rare cases, people have been known to contract leprosy, as in New York City. In the years of 2000 and 2008, two separate incidents occurred with two men, unbeknownst to each other, found themselves with Hansen's disease. Neither one had traveled out of the country. Another situation regarding a woman, location unknown, was told that she had lupus when in fact she had leprosy. Because incidences of this type of disease is so rare in New York City, a diagnosis of leprosy would not be the first diagnosis, because New York City does not have mild winters. On the body, the bacteria prefer the cooler places within the body, like the peripherals, nose, fingers, toes, ears, eyes, and testicles. Brazil is a hotbed for leprosy. From the years 2001 to 2015, there were approximately 605,673 cases reported due to overcrowding in slum areas of Brazil, known as favelas. The three-banded armadillo is endemic to eastern Brazil, where overcrowding exists. This is an ancient disease that lays dormant in the body from 1 month to 20 years before a patient notices a change in their body. By that time, the spread of infection travels at an extreme rate, with many people having been exposed to it. This is a very treatable disease, but without proper medical care and testing, disease grows exponentially unchecked in this type of environment. Some people are too poor or too embarrassed to admit having leprosy because of the stigma attached to it. In uncommon areas where leprosy is not usually seen, as in New York, misdiagnosis occurs, which is what happened to a man from Queens, New York, who had never ventured out of the United States because it was so uncommon in New York. It was diagnosed as lupus. Many times when people visit friends and relatives in immigrant neighborhoods, they bring the bacteria home with them. And this is a true story right here. In 1982, Staten Island, where I grew up, there was an epidemic at the Bailey Seton Hospital, which is now closed and abandoned. At that time, I had a friend who worked there, and he took me to the Hansen ward, as he called it. It was more of a male-only dormitory where people were painting and doing all manner of intricate crafts, and they did not look sick at all to me. After I visited, I asked, what's Hansen's disease? Because they didn't look like they were sick at all. And then he told me that it was leprosy. Well, I did not believe him, not even for 1 minute, because none of the patients looked sick. Most of them were different shades of tan and brown, like foreign people coming from another country, exotic lands. One of the men looked as though he had acne on his face, but that was it. Still, one did not believe one because one had preconceived ideas about leprosy, like being cursed for a hidden sin that was so grievous that God wanted to expose that person. No amount of explanation by one's friends would extricate the misgivings about leprosy from one's mind. Most people are ignorant of the medical facts of leprosy. For one, it is not a curse. Two, it is not highly contagious as once thought. This type of thinking caused people to be cast out of society, abandoned by family, community, and friends. Look at that sign over there. There's leprosy colony. Beware, lepers an area that would not be tolerated in this day and age now, but anyway, looking at the map, one can see the different areas of the world within the range of the leprosy infection. Most of the areas cover poor developing countries with destitute populations that are not privileged to proper sanitation, medical care, food, education, and proper housing. The most affected areas in Brazil are Para, with 106,533 cases, and Maranhão, 105,608 cases. All of Brazil suffers the most incidences of leprosy in the Western Hemisphere. The largest number of leprosy patients continue to be in the Southeast Asia and Central Africa, with smaller numbers in South and Central America. Brazil, Nepal, Mozambique, and Tanzania are among the list comprising the greatest number of cases. In the United States, Northwest Louisiana, 5 patients were delayed the diagnosis of leprosy because of the unusual circumstances. None of the 5 patients traveled outside the United States, which makes one wonder, where in the world did they pick it up? All victims had non-healing rashes, 2 with numbness. Of course, they were misdiagnosed as non-infectious mycosis fungoides, erythema multiforme, and what's the other one? Vasculitis and amyloidosis. Finally, the diagnosis of leprosy was established in all 5 individuals based on clinical presentation, routine histopathology, and tissue acid fast staining. This case series highlights the importance of leprosy, especially in the southern United States, where its incidence is increasing, like in Louisiana. I have to include the United States in this because even though these people have not been out of the United States, they were subjected to the disease being brought in by carriers from another country. Apparently, even though they were misdiagnosed, the disease was abated because of the availability of medicine and care in this country. People are no longer sent to leper colonies that warned the community that a colony existed in their neighborhood. People were housed and separated from all that was familiar to them, but this practice ceased. And this is the end of my presentation. I hope I didn't make a lot of mistakes. I know I stumbled a bit with some of the pronunciations, but that's it. Thank you very much for listening. Bye. And these are my references. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 references. I hope that they are correct.